Hey friends, welcome to episode 490 of the My 123 Cents podcast. I am your host, Kevin Huntsberger, and joining me this week, once again from Los Angeles, is Chad Smart. And Chad, full disclosure for our listeners and viewers, this week's episode we are recording on the Saturday morning of WrestleMania weekend, so we are not going to be talking about WrestleMania 40 at all in terms of what happened or giving our thoughts or reviews, but we were just had a lengthy conversation about the Hall of Fame that even though it was lengthy, not nearly as long as Thunderbolt Patterson's speech from the induction ceremony. But I know you've been busy watching all kinds of stuff already this WrestleMania weekend. It's always a great time for wrestling fans.
Yeah, it's well. First, talking about Thunderbolt Patterson, I think they should make a T-shirt with Thunderbolt and Mr. T, and just have it covered in words and "Mama" and Gerald Briscoe. I said Gerald Briscoe. Yeah, that was. I'm looking forward to going back and watching the first 3 hours of the Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yeah, because you
So I
just
got
picked
to.
up with with Thunderbolt, so yeah, you got
Yes,
all kinds of treats ahead of you.
but yeah, WrestleMania week has become WrestleMania. Well, I was going to say WrestleMania Sunday has become WrestleMania week, basically.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of independent shows going on that are streaming. And I've been trying to keep up with mostly the Game Changer Wrestling GCW shows. I haven't watched anything that's on the High Spots network, which unfortunately means I have not got to see my favorite indie wrestler this weekend, Paul Walter Hauser, other than his brief appearance at the Ring of Honor show. Spoiler. If you haven't watched that yet, but yeah, it's we've talked about before. Like I used to really be into the indie scene back in the early 2000s, 2010s, and I've kind of drifted away from that. And so I'm watching these shows, not knowing who any of these wrestlers are, and I don't want to be negative, but and I'm not calling for the return of the steroid era of the Hulk Hogan's, the Ultimate Warriors, but if you look like a wrestler that I could probably go toe to toe with in the ring, I have a hard time buying you as a
Hmm.
professional sports entertainer. And
Yeah.
we'll leave it at that.
Well, let me ask you this too, as a fan and a fan of indies and whatnot, because and later in this episode we're going to talk more about our WrestleMania memories. And here's a stat I'm going to throw out at you before we do that. We have been to a quarter of all WrestleManias. Does that not blow your mind?
I mean, especially since we, started over halfway through the
Right.
WrestleMania run.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, and I guess Um, a lot of those shows those manias it was kind of in the early days of it becoming a bigger event. I think WrestleMania itself was always still, other than last year when we went, was still just on Sunday night, but then they had Hall of Fame on Saturday, and then Friday there was indie show that would go to Ring of Honor or whatever, and then that year we went to New York for 29. I feel like we got there like on Tuesday or Wednesday, and we went to stuff third. So the indie companies have worked wisely, and WrestleCon and all that, to kind of piggyback on the popularity of Mania, and I think that that's probably a good strategy for most. But what are your thoughts? Does it lead to fan fatigue? Because especially now that WrestleMania or that WWE is putting NXT out there during this week, they're throwing out the Hall of Fame. I think I had another event going on earlier in the week. There's WWE World. There are all of these things that are, Raw the Monday after. All of these things that are kind of taking fans' attention, but also their money. Uh, and then you got all these indie shows, and we were talking before we started recording about how venues in Los Angeles, for example, where we were last year for Mania, are you're paying almost hundreds of dollars in fees, not even counting the ticket for entry. So, do you ever see a time where the indies get hurt by all of this because things are growing so fast and so big for WWE, and they're offering more things? The Undertaker's one-man show, and all of these things that WWE is offering. Is it going to impact or hurt the indies, and do the indies need to come together more for that weekend and do
well,
things that are more concentrated.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we have seen over the years is because if I remember correctly, and I'm trying to remember when the indies really started, piggybacking off that. I knew Ring of Honor because our first WrestleMania was 22, and we went to Ring of Honor the weekend before that, and I think that was really the only indie promotion that was running that weekend. And then, yes, as it's gotten bigger, and depending on where it was, when you're in like 29 was in the New York area, the tri-state area, so you had a lot of indies that ran that area frequently, and a lot of them have come together. Like the ones that I've been watching, I mentioned, are all under like the Game Changer Wrestling umbrella, but you have promotions like Defy, Progress, DDT. They're all running in the same building. They're all running, so you don't have companies setting up rings, tearing them down, trying to get ready. It's like, I mean, I believe they come in, they set up, and then they're done for the weekend. And then you just shuffle in your crowds between shows, which I think is smart for the indie promotions to work together, and yeah, I think WWE may have been caught off guard a little bit in the early days, and now they're like, hey, if all these fans are coming in and they're willing to pay all this money to go to these, indie shows or WrestleCon, or we should be getting some of that money, more of that money too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I think, because the first year we went, and I don't want to jump ahead in the conversation, but they had a tent set up basically in the parking lot with some memorabilia, and that was it. And then by the time we got to Houston, that's when they started doing Access. Mm-hmm. And that grew into bigger, and now it's WWE World, which based on some things that I've seen, I don't know if it's a better thing or not, because it seems like it's just people waiting in line.
Did we pay to go into WWE World last year? I don't remember, or WrestleMania World, whatever they're calling it.
No, last year was just like the Superstore.
Yeah, they had some props and stuff set up, but
yeah,
we didn't pay. It was just more to walk through the store. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where they get you. They have all this cool stuff that you want to
buy. Yes. I got no sarcastic comment for that, but yeah. So I think, WWE trying to get in on the audience. I also, and this is just based on my feeling, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not into the independent wrestling scene as much as I used to be, or as big as I used to be. So it's like watching these shows, I don't, other than a handful of names, I don't know who the wrestlers are. And, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you have to be exposed to new talent, not in the way that wrestling locker rooms used to be, but you need to be exposed to new talent so that the wrestling business can continue and grow. But I think the biggest problem is, well, one other than cost, it's also time frame. And it's like, how much can you do? How much do you want to do? And if you're visiting a city that you've never been to before, I mean, when you came out here last year for, to LA, you'd been here once before, and we'd spend a day kind of touristing around, but we really didn't have a lot of time to do, we went to the Warner Brothers tour, and that's pretty much the only touristy thing that we got to do, because between the Wrestling Pro Wrestling show, between the 2 nights of Mania, which started, I mean, granted, they started earlier here on the West Coast than they do on the East, but yeah, you just don't have a lot of time. So unless you're going to spend an entire week in a city somewhere, I think, getting back to your question, is I think there probably is some fatigue, and I'd be curious, people who went the entire week, how they're feeling on Tuesday or Wednesday next week. Like, do you take days off to recuperate?
It is interesting too, like you were saying, because they are, WWE, and I don't know if this was ever an official statement, but it seemed like probably in the last decade, at least, maybe even in the last 20 years, they've been focusing more on those cities that have attractions. Orlando, you can go to Disney World, you can go to Universal. That first year we went to Orlando for WrestleMania, we did the package thing, and it included tickets to Universal Studios. So now you're competing for dollars for the touristy things, and then also all these other companies. And one more thing I wanted to ask you about that part of it before we dive into our topic is, What about AEW? I can't imagine back in the day WCW trying to piggyback off of WrestleMania weekend just because
Mm.
they were like legit head-to-head competitors, and AEW is an alternative. TNA. I don't recall either one of these companies, even though Ring of Honor kind of technically has uh, put up a show on Friday night and kind of
Mm.
piggybacked off of the WrestleMania weekend. I know they did it last year as well, but are you surprised AEW doesn't have a presence and TNA don't have a presence during WrestleMania weekend, or is it because they let their talent go and do these other shows?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised TNA doesn't. And I think even in Orlando, I think the only TNA presence was a truck that drove around the
Yeah.
airports that, or not the airports, but the hotel parking lots with the TNA sign.
Hmm.
You know, although I guess they did do a taping or a show because that's when one of the Highlanders showed up in the audience and was on TV and then
Oh,
got fired. So that might be a reason why they don't know how that. But yeah, I know. Tony Khan has said that he doesn't want AEW competing because it's WWE's weekend.
mhm.
However, they do Ring of Honor, and I don't know if that's just because Ring of Honor has been a tradition at WrestleMania weekend since WrestleMania 21 or 20 or
Yeah,
22, or
yeah,
um, and it's yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I don't know. I know there are some AEW talent that is showing up um, on these independent shows, and there's even some WWE wrestlers that have showed up at one of the shows, the Bloodsport,
oh
which is
yeah, Shayna Baszler, right?
Shayna Baszler and
And she won, I believe. Spoiler
yeah,
alert. Sorry.
she won.
Okay, I didn't
But
watch
yeah,
everybody.
Charlie Dempsey, who is Stephen Regal's or William Regal's son,
Oh,
also appeared on the show. He's in NXT right now, so
oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
yeah. So that's something I'm curious going forward if we'll see if WWE's like, okay, these people aren't going to be on the WrestleMania card.
Hmm.
Let's let them, do some indie show or appearances.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I think for AEW and TNA, I guess to an extent, is if you're trying to be seen as on the same level,
Right. Yeah.
you don't want to be also seen as piggybacking like the smaller promotions are.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So I understand you have a WrestleMania quiz.
Yes, because I have gone back over the last couple of weeks and watched WrestleMania 35, 30, no, 33 through 39 again,
Okay.
with the exception of 36, because that one is just getting lost in the annals of time.
Yeah.
Um, I know that if I sit here and if I quiz you on, who wrestled Junkyard Dog at WrestleMania 1, or give me
Right.
the
Summer Valentine.
give me the brackets of the WrestleMania 4 tournament,
Yes.
you
I
could
could
give
do
those
that.
to me.
I could do that. Yes.
Over the last 5 years, though, I'm watching these shows being like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. So I want to test your memory of
Okay.
WrestleMania, starting with WrestleMania. I think it starts with WrestleMania 35.
Okay.
And these are just things I jotted down
Okay.
while I was watching. So
Oh,
we'll see.
okay. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, and we'll get into it when we talk in a little bit too. The manias that we've been to, things happened that I had forgotten happened,
Yeah.
and we were there watching it. So, yeah, this is gonna be interesting.
Okay. At WrestleMania 35, who was Ricochet's tag team partner?
I'm gonna say Aleister Black.
Ah, very good. Okay. Who are the two wrestlers who had impromptu matches at WrestleMania 34 and 35?
They were the same wrestlers.
Same wrestlers had interactions that weren't promoted matches beforehand.
I feel like John Cena had. I can't remember the year John Cena and the Undertaker had their impromptu match. Is that one of them?
Well, I'll say Cena is one of them, but it's not the Undertaker.
Okay, so then someone else at
Yeah,
35 had an impromptu match. The Miz.
Elias,
Who did he wrestle?
Cena, the
Oh,
Elias
John.
and Cena.
Oh,
Had it.
okay. I got.
Yeah.
Okay, I get you.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't remember that at all. John
Yeah.
Cena and Elias wrestled at WrestleMania.
They had an impromptu little, I don't know if you'd call it an official match, but
Oh, is that? Yeah, that was the year they kind of did the. Didn't he do a rap? He came out dressed in the Thugonomics, right?
yeah, see, now that again, I watched this last week. I'm forgetting it, but you're reminding me. Elias came out to do his little, shtick singing, and then he had video of him playing piano and the drums, and so it was like him doing a one man band show basically. And Heath
Okay.
Slater's like backstage being like, "Dude, that's my gimmick."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then Cena came out. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Moving on. In 2019, at the Hall of Fame ceremony, two wrestlers were inducted separately. So they weren't, wasn't they going in together like wouldn't have been Rotunda this year, but two wrestlers went in separately, but it was kind of fitting that they went in together in the same year based on a previous connection.
God, I'm trying to think of 2000. Who would have been? I'm trying to even think of that ceremony. I have no clue.
The Honky Tonk Man and Billy Gunn, who went in as part of DX.
Okay, God, we would have sat here for 3 hours. I
Yeah.
thought of that.
Okay. I lied. There is a 30 Mania 36 question. What was unique about the tag team ladder match at WrestleMania 36?
It was all singles competitors. It was one member of each team, and I
Yep.
believe it was New Day, the Usos, and Miz and Morrison.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Cool. Yes. And I believe the reason was because one of the tag team partners had come down with COVID
Okay.
beforehand. So,
I don't think they ever really explained why they were doing it that way because I'm like,
yeah.
well, they're doing, what's okay, that makes sense then if one of them was out. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just a weird thing to like, why do a singles tag team ladder match and not
Yeah.
just let them recruit new people? And then you have a storyline afterwards.
There you go.
What was the first match in front of a live crowd after the pandemic? So WrestleMania 37, what opened the show?
Was that Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton?
It was not. I mean, I think that was on the show, unfortunately, and a box-like structure, but it did not open the show.
I don't know then.
Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think Lashley beat him that was for the belt too, wasn't it? Or was that
Um, I think Lashley was champion, and Lashley retained, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
There was a women's tag team turmoil match.
Yes.
Who was Naomi's partner in that match?
Oh, what year was this? Or what Mania?
37.
37. I'm gonna say Asuka.
Lana.
Oh my God. I
And then,
know. Again, I could have been here for
yeah,
hours and wouldn't have guessed Lana.
yeah, and I was following that up. Carmella also was in this match with the tag team partner that was not a regular tag team partner that I recall. Do you remember who she teamed with?
My sweetheart Nia Jax.
Nia Jax, I believe, teamed with Tamina in this match,
Oh,
if I remember correctly.
that makes
But
sense.
Carmella teamed with Billy Kay because the Iconics had split up.
Oh. Did they split them up and feud them, or did they just?
I think they just split them up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember them wrestling each other.
Now, this was my favorite part of WrestleMania 37. Why did Shane O'Mac and Braun Strowman fight? Why were they feuding?
This was at 36, wasn't it?
37.
They had a cage match, but I don't remember. It wasn't Shane just being a dick and like calling him names and calling him dumb and whatnot.
Wow, I'm impressed. Yes, Shane called Braun stupid, and that's what
Okay.
led to this match. So this is up there with Jericho spilling coffee on Kane and Booker T and Edge fighting over a shampoo commercial
Yeah.
as dumbest reasons to have a
Uh,
WrestleMania match. Yes, it was the Brains versus the Braun match.
okay. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no, I was wrong about what I just said recently. But who were the women's tag team champions at WrestleMania 37?
Um, I don't know. Was it? It wasn't. Was that the year it was Bailey and Sasha?
Nope. I think Bailey and Sasha won.
Oh,
No, no, I take it back. No, they did not because
I think the Iconics won. I think at one of them, but
they won at 35, I believe. The one
okay.
in New York or 30. Again, I don't even remember which ones were back in New York. And again, I just watched these in the last 2 weeks. Anyway, it was Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax were the champions at 37,
Okay.
which I have no recollection of them being champions. Um,
Wow.
um, Sami Zayn fought Kevin Owens at WrestleMania.
Hmm.
Who was Sammy's guest of honor to be in his corner at that match?
That was Logan Paul.
I see. I completely forget that Logan Paul. That's how he came into WWE.
I only remember that, or I only know that. I don't remember it. I only know that because as I was doing the WrestleMania random fun facts every day, I had
Mm,
looked up and was just reading more about some because I didn't want it to all be like WrestleManias 1 through 10, heavy
mm,
on that. So I was looking up and just kind of rereading results and stuff from the first or from the last 10 WrestleManias as well. And that one, I do remember that one sticking out to me.
man.
Because I'm like, oh, that's weird that because I thought Logan's first WrestleMania was when he teamed with The Miz. So I know
Yeah.
that was the first time he wrestled, but I thought that was his introduction, but it wasn't.
No. Yeah. One thing I forgot is that they have the opening videos for WrestleMania are now narrated by celebrities.
Uh huh.
Who did the WrestleMania 38 opening?
Hmm. Somebody from 2 years ago. I'm gonna guess. Was it a man or a woman?
It was a man.
It was a man.
Yeah, you can go say hi
Uh,
to your mom for me.
was it Mr. T?
No, that was
Oh,
Mark Wahlberg.
oh, again. So what was the relevance of him being the voice? Because where
And no clue.
was WrestleMania wasn't in Boston, was it?
No,
Huh.
I have no idea why. I know that they had tried to get him. Like, I think it was WrestleMania 10. There was like I've read rumors that like a Marky Mark versus Donnie Wahlberg match was I think maybe hinted about by wanted by because I think Donnie showed up at one of the WrestleManias.
Donnie was at WrestleMania 10, I think. Yeah.
10. Yeah, I think he pitched an idea for him versus Mark at the time,
Huh.
which would have been interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess they could still do it today, but um, only if New Kids on the Block come out with Donnie and Mark comes out with the Funky Bunch.
There you go.
Uh, WrestleMania 38 Sunday. So now we're into the 2 days.
Okay.
So the Sunday day opened with a non-traditional segment. Do you know how it opened and
Kevin,
what the significance was?
what's that?
And the significance of it.
I don't have any idea.
That's when Triple H comes out and leaves his boots in the ring.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I forgot that he did that at WrestleMania. So he's like, oh, I got to be like the Undertaker. Okay, now we get into WrestleMania 39, which you and I were both in attendance for.
Yes.
From either Saturday or Sunday, who sang America the Beautiful?
No clue. I
That would
couldn't
be
even tell you who's doing it this year.
that would be Becky G and Jimmy Allen, who are apparently singers and people that exist on this world.
Yeah, no
Uh,
idea.
yeah, before the Usos came out, who performed a version of their theme song or a song to bring them out? I don't know. No, that's actually their song.
Oh gosh. I don't know.
I know you have all of his albums on your playlist. It's Lil Uzi Vert.
I knew it was going to be somebody with Lil in the first part of the name, but I couldn't. I wouldn't have guessed what Lil
Which,
was.
yeah, I've heard Lil Uzi Vert is just a play on Lucifer, and that the whole rap scene is demonic. So
Mm,
you can take that for what it's worth. All right, two more, and then we'll wrap this long-winded, painful segment up.
still
WrestleMania 30.
better than Thunderbolt Patterson.
WrestleMania 39 featured something that hadn't happened since Mania 27. So we're in attendance for both of these WrestleManias.
Okay.
What do they have in common besides us probably ignoring half the show?
Heel wins the main event.
Was that had that not happened since 27?
I don't know.
I don't know either because
I
that's not
just
what I
know
have.
in 27, the year the Miz won the main event,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then Roman won the main event. But
Eh.
I guess you have
Well,
something.
I mean, Roman has won
Oh yeah,
several years
Roman
in
has
a
one. Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, never mind
Uh,
on that.
uh, they were the first WrestleMania 39 was the first WrestleMania since 27 to feature a Hell in the Cell match.
Oh yes.
All right, and this one you should know because we talked about it a few weeks ago. So I've given you some time to study. The Weeknd has had the theme song for the last 5 WrestleManias. Name any of them.
Um, God, I'm drawing a blank. I can sing it, but I do
Sing it
that.
because uh, I'm going to say sure because I have no clue. Starting with WrestleMania 36, it was Blinding Lights, Save Your Tears, Sacrifice, Less Than Zero, and Gasoline.
Hmm.
Otherwise known as five
No
songs
idea.
I've never heard, except for
Yeah.
Blinding Lights. I do know I've heard that one, but
What is a song that has never been played in my kitchen?
exactly.
Wow. So
Um,
yeah, we're boomers, and
yeah,
well, we're really Gen Xers, but
yeah. And I
let's
wonder,
say,
is it because we have so much more going on in our lives? We're not focusing on WrestleMania. We don't have the After magazines or the WWE magazines that we're reading to keep up, and with just the influx of entertainment these days, is it
yeah,
just
I
everything
think
is nothing gets processed anymore?
that is interesting because I would wonder. Maybe I'll reach out to Hunter Woodworth at some point. He's a zillennial who is a wrestling fan. I wonder if he can recall. I mean, obviously, you can recall the stuff from when you were a kid growing up, or
Mhm.
I'm curious if we grew up in this era, would we remember it as fondly and as
Yeah.
quickly as those other, you know,
Mm. I mean, yeah, and there's so many pay-per-views now. It's I don't even
yeah,
remember who fought on the last month's pay-per-view or
yeah,
premium live event or special show or I mean, and because going back, we've discussed the whole Cody Rhodes challenging Roman aspect and how I am not a fan of that storyline right now. I completely forgot that pretty much for the last 6 months of last year, Cody was feuding with Judgment Day
yeah,
because he fought Dominic Mysterio on a pay per view or PLE. He and Jay won the tag titles from Judgment Day, then lost them back to Judgment Day, and then he fought Damian Priest on a couple shows. I'm like, sure. Again, it had nothing to do with Roman Reigns or the Bloodline, so way to build up that story.
yes. So we are going to talk about the manias that we've been to. Now, if you had a choice
Mhm.
back in the day, what WrestleMania would you have most wanted to have attended that you didn't attend? And did you ever get close to attending a WrestleMania before we went to WrestleMania 22 in Chicago?
Do I have the knowledge of what happens at the show before I make my choice, or is it just based on the card before the
Just
show
based on
happened?
the card and the build up and the hype for it.
It would be the first pay per view that I bought, which would be WrestleMania 5, because I wanted to see Savage beat the Orange Goblin,
Hmm.
and then I would have
Donald
been
Trump
very
didn't
upset.
wrestle at WrestleMania 5.
What's that?
Donald Trump didn't wrestle at WrestleMania 5.
He was there though.
He was, yes.
But yeah, I would have left crying like a lot of Cody crybabies after that show. So
That's a good show. That's a good pick. I would have, you know, even before we knew what it was going to be and mean to it. I always say either WrestleMania 1, the very first WrestleMania, or WrestleMania 3. Um, just because I can
yeah,
still remember very vividly the build up, not just for Hogan and Andre and Savage and Steamboat, but also the Roddy Piper Adrian Adonis match. Those
done.
3 matches were the ones that I was looking most forward to as a fan, and just looking back now, and it's iconic, in
Yeah,
its build and hype and everything.
yeah, I would go with that one too because Alice Cooper was there,
Hmm.
and at the time, I was really getting into Alice Cooper as He's my favorite musician, and again, should be in the celebrity wing of the Hall of Fame. Maybe one of these days, when Cyndi Lauper keeps turning them down, they'll finally get around to him. But yeah, that one being the biggest WrestleMania would have been interesting, but we would have had to go to Detroit. So yeah.
Did you ever get close to going to Mania? We both grew up in the Midwest, Missouri and Illinois, respectively.
Yeah.
Did you ever have
I mean,
going
no,
to
I think the closest that would have come would have been Indiana, WrestleMania 7,
eight?
8, yeah. Indianapolis, and I'm only saying that because that's the closest proximity that WrestleMania was after WrestleMania 2. Um,
I had,
so
I was a freshman in college. I had seriously contemplated it, but I did not have the, uh, I guess, knowledge, experience, wherewithal to figure out, this is pre-internet for those that are younger than us listening.
yeah.
I didn't know how to go about even and listening back now, I think they papered a lot of that event too, it sounds like, or, they had freebies or whatever. So an Indy would have been probably where I was in Cape Girardeau at the time,
About
probably
4 hours.
4 or 5 hour drive. So it would have been doable. And my roommate at the time was also a wrestling fan. He had the big satellite dish in his backyard when we were in high school, and that's where I watched WrestleMania 7. But I think his mom ended up taping it for us and then sending it down, and we watched it later. But yeah, that would have been my closest. And then I can remember when WrestleMania 20 was happening not when I found out that WrestleMania 20, because I was living here at the time, but before we had moved, I had mentioned that it was going to be in New York, and my wife, because my brother-in-law lives in New York, and she was like, "Oh, I wonder if he could try to get tickets or whatever." Obviously, that didn't happen either, but that would have been really cool because it was in MSG. But those are the two manias that I really think about. I at least talked about it and contemplated doing it, but never pulled the trigger. So
Yeah, I never thought, I never even really considered going to WrestleMania as a possibility until 22, when, you and I were working together, and it was in Chicago, which was still a longer drive than really would have cared for. And it's also Chicago, which also don't care for. But we're like, hey, it's in the same state. We might as well go because this is going to be our only chance to. Little did we know.
yeah, exactly. And so yeah,
stupid decisions would be made further down the road.
we did I mean, we did it big. We did
we did the travel package.
Yeah,
the platinum package, because again, we thought this is going to be, if we're going to do it once,
yeah,
go all out.
And that is why and I was telling somebody this story at work the other day. I found out one of my coworkers is a big wrestling fan as well. And so we were talking about going, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go sometime," and blah, blah, blah. And I was telling him about it. And I said, I sold my Star Wars collection to fund that first trip to WrestleMania. And then he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you did that." But I'm like, I do, when I see pictures of Star Wars figures on Facebook, because I follow a couple of the nostalgia groups. I'm like, but then I'm like, that was a great time. That WrestleMania weekend, we had a lot of fun. We went to the Ring of Honor show. We went to the Hall of Fame. We went to the brunch or breakfast thing that they had, part of it at least. Mania itself. It was a great experience. And like I said, with hindsight, I thought that was going to be our one and only opportunity to do it. So we did it big, and it was fun. And, I originally said, Mania memories. And I think if we just kind of randomly talk, and I don't know if there needs to be specific moments, but if you have things that you want to specifically talk about, but just that whole vibe that weekend, and dressing like the Spirit Squad, and fans thinking that some fans thinking that we were actually members of the Spirit Squad walking around Target before the show started at Allstate Arena. I got a chuckle out of that as well.
Yeah. No, and running into other fans dressed as a Spirit Squad. Because I'm like, no one's gonna, I try when we come up with the cosplay idea, with the exception of at like 25, when we were paying tribute to the first WrestleMania, I try to go off the beaten path and try to, I don't want to do the ones that everyone is going to probably be,
Right.
and so I'm like, no one's going to be the Spirit Squad.
Right.
Well, little did we know.
And then they won the tag team titles the next night on Raw. So
Yeah, I
definitely got
take that as because of us, and that was fun, too, because that started our streak of being interviewed by TV stations that never put us actually in the final product.
yeah.
And that's where we're like, hey, if we're going to be cheerleaders, we have to come up with cheers. And
Yes.
so that was fun. I also think, one of the memories is during the autograph session, we got to talk to Jimmy Hart and to have a conversation with it, not just like, hey, Jimmy, sign, like he actually stopped and we talked for a little bit. And, I remember going like, TNA, who do you think is going to be their big up and coming star? And he's like, oh, Sting, baby, Sting. He's going to, and I'm like, the guy that's been wrestling for 20, I mean, I guess he did have almost a 25-year career after that,
Yeah.
or for 20-year career
Yeah.
after that. So maybe Jimmy Hart was onto something, but
He may
yeah.
have been. Um, yeah, you were saying something about the Spirit Squad, or the
Or
being
cheers.
interviewed,
Oh yeah.
and you know, and I've completely lost the thought.
Uh,
So
well, I was just going to jump off of that to being where I think, it was great that we had our friend Jeremy with us
yeah,
because you and I are not the most personable
right.
um, extroverts, whereas Jeremy is,
Yeah,
he can talk to a brick wall and carry on a conversation
yeah,
for hours.
right.
Not a bad thing. He's just a very, so I remember being back at the hotel bar after the show and we're like, there are all these people here from all these countries, all these, every state is represented. We haven't talked to anybody. We should talk to, somebody. And that's how we ended up going over to a table, making a fool out of ourselves by doing our cheers. But we met our friends Jackie and Becca from Australia, Gary from England, some other guy that was with Gary who we didn't keep in touch with afterwards. But, and that's a friendship that, um, when we went to WrestleMania 2028 down in Miami, like I went to New York with Gary and Jackie the week before to, hang out
Yeah,
in New York. I've gone to Australia to visit Jackie. I've met other friends through her and all that. So I think, that's a great memory from
yeah.
Mania too.
And that was also, this was pre-social media. I mean, we were on,
MySpace.
but that
Yeah.
was it. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter
No.
or anything like that. We didn't even have smartphones at that time.
Yeah.
I don't think I even had a cell phone when we went to those first couple manias. So everything, the pictures we took were all on a digital camera,
Yeah.
and but the thought came back to me.
Okay.
I found out later, and I'll put it in the show notes of the link to it. Greg Davis, who we came to meet later in life
Mm-hmm.
through AAPW and Chris Hagstrom, and actually went to WrestleMania 29 with. Um, he recorded or had video of us doing one of our cheers at WrestleMania
Yeah.
22 in the parking lot at Allstate. So, and again, this was before fan access was really a thing, and we are just kind of walking around and talking. And I think the costumes also, like you said, we are very introverted and don't socialize um, at events like that. But it opens us up to then talking to people because they want to come
Yeah.
up and say, hey, they want to take a picture or whatever. And then you run into other cosplayers, and I've met a few, especially after last year, and we'll get to that later. But it's always a fun experience. And
Yeah.
at 24, we skipped
Well,
23. Oh yeah,
real quick, I'm going to go to 22 side tangent storyline. Probably one of the best moments was the Ring of Honor show. Other than you calling Samoa Joe Rikishi 2.0.
no,
But
I called him. Yeah, it was Rikishi. This was before
Rikishi,
Umaga. It was right before
yeah,
Umaga debuted. Yes, I
yeah,
called
you're
Rikishi.
calling. But I'm a huge fan of Delirious, who was a wrestler at the time, went on to be ROH Booker. He was wrestling in a match. I had my homemade Delirious mask on, and he got beat down in his match. And the crowd's all cheering. I'm standing up booing. It was Rocky Romero who was beating him down, and I'm like booing. And Rocky gets on the mic, which you could barely understand because people still don't understand how to hook up good sound systems at indie wrestling shows. But he's like, you don't belong here. You're a joke. And that, MF friend, the mask over there doesn't mean Jack. I'm censoring myself for that. So to be called out that way, it's kind of fun. And then, having toilet paper, like the embassy came out and instead of throwing streamers, people threw toilet paper at them. And I think it was not Jack Evans. I can't think of the guy who just recently passed away, unfortunately, but he picked up a roll of toilet paper and threw it right at the crowd, and it hit the guy right in front of us, right in the face. So thankfully that guy was there to protect us. But yeah, that was probably one of the best ROH moments. And unfortunately, we left the ROH show. We were talking about the Hall of Fame earlier, going on late. The main event for that WrestleMania or that ROH show was, I believe, Bryan Danielson versus Roderick Strong, I want to say. And it was a 1 hour time limit match that started at midnight. And I think we left at like 12:05 because we were like, it's been too long of a day.
Yeah, because we drove. That was the day we drove up to Chicago too. So yeah. It had turned into a long day. The other funny thing from that show was the Samoa Joe Necro Butcher brawl, and they were in the crowd, and they were knocking like right in front of, like literally, we could have reached out and touched these guys, and so everybody's scattering, and Jeremy was just going crazy, and that kid, there was a kid, and that kid, I think, crapped his pants. I mean, he had this face of terror, and I was laughing so hard between Jeremy and this kid who was just kind of like trying to absorb it all, and that was almost 20 years ago. I wonder what that kid's up to these days. And it was so funny to me.
Yeah, because I think Jeremy was like, use the kid. Yeah.
And the kid was like, oh.
Yeah. And then I remember, we talked about the Spirit Squad getting mistaken for them at Target. I remember as we were, I think it was like at intermission or something, I had my Delirious mask on and we're just standing around, and some kid comes up and asks me for my autograph because he thought I was Delirious.
Yeah, you were Delirious, but for other reasons.
Yeah, I can't remember if I said no, or I haven't, for some reason, I have a memory of signing it, avoid the clap, which is what Tom Hanks signs in A League of Their Own.
Oh man. That was a fun, and that's of course the first, so it's always going to hold that nostalgia. And I always, maybe we don't end up hitting everyone or going into the details that we're going into, because this is going to turn into the Hall of Fame. But I think that there's always also, because I've been to even after we went to the first couple of WrestleManias, I've been to other WWE events, house shows, and then I went to the Royal Rumble in 2012. I know you've been to much more and more shows, and I've been to a lot of indie shows. But even that first year in Chicago, even though it was indoors and it was at Allstate Arena, probably the last indoor WrestleMania.
The last arena, because they have done indoor.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. The last arena show. When you walk in, I can still remember seeing the big WrestleMania sign, and that was the year they had all the individual superstar posters or banners circling around the ceiling. There's just that like moment of that vibe of, I'm here. I've dreamed about this. I've wanted to do this for so long, and now I'm here, and it's really actually happening. And so for me, and even in the years that followed, you're walking into this stadium and there's so many people, and there's, I think last year was the first year that it was more of a chill vibe, because we did get to kind of hang. I didn't feel rushed to get to our seats. And last year we kind of chilled and drank a beer or two and took pictures and talked and whatever. But those other years, it was just like you're walking in and it's like this, the stage is set up, and especially those years where we were in the stadiums and the stages are set up, and it's just this grandiose thing that when you see it, you watch it on TV, and I love watching it on TV because you're more comfortable, obviously, but being there and feeling that moment is just something that, unless you're a fan of wrestling, I really can't explain that.
Yeah, in that regard, because this is something they've started doing, I think, in the last few years. I don't remember them doing it the first years that we went, but WWE puts out a video revealing the WrestleMania set there, a couple of days before Mania. And in the past, even this year, I don't watch those videos because I want to be surprised when I walk if especially if we were there walking into the state, you want to see it for the first time. You want to kind of want to take it in that way. Do you feel the same way if we were going this year? And last night on SmackDown, as we record this on Saturday, they had Logan Paul in the uh, Lincoln Field Center, whatever it's called, standing on the stage of WrestleMania. So they kind of like showed it there, which I thought kind of takes away from
Mm-hmm.
the impact of seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I agree. I do think I saw. The only thing I've seen this year is just kind of the picture of all the stuff sitting there getting ready to be set up. I have not seen the setup, and I don't click on the videos to watch them, especially like you said, if we're gonna be there, because I want to have that moment of like awe
Yeah.
and seeing it in person and really kind of absorbing it all. And when we went to, obviously they're all awe-inspiring and whatnot. But yeah, last year sticks out, and maybe because it's the freshest in my mind, but
Mm-hmm.
also the year in New York. I liked that setup. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, what was there a year we went and I know it was cold when we were in New York or in New Jersey. But I feel like we were closer to the ring at one, and you could kind of almost feel the heat because they had heaters set up. And maybe I'm
Mm.
thinking of something else, but
I mean, 22, obviously we were close and you could feel the fire from the pyro. 24, we were also close. And then I don't think we,
Florida, so yeah, they wouldn't
yeah,
have had heaters on anyway.
yeah.
Uh, and when we went to 24, that was a fun one too because of being in Florida. We mentioned the travel package. We got the two tickets for 2 days, 2 days to go to Universal Studios. Throw in the Hall of Fame. I'm trying to remember. I know we went to Ring of Honor, but I don't think we did any other wrestling shows at that year's.
No. And I don't, yeah. And other than the WWE autograph session, there wasn't any WrestleCon or anything like that either.
Yeah. So, and then, sticking around, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, but that was the year of Flair's last match, and being there for that, even though we were dressed like Hornswoggle,
I don't know what you're talking about.
being there for that moment, and that was the year too. We were like 4 or 5 rows back, and it was just a really cool experience. And then
Mm-hmm.
kind of just randomly on a whim deciding, because we had spent Monday at Universal Studios, and
Yeah.
we're going to
And
go
I don't
home.
know. Yeah. And I don't know why we left Universal early because
I think we were tired. I think we were.
maybe we were tired or we wanted to go and watch Raw. I don't
Yeah,
remember. I just
well, we
remember,
were. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just remember being back at the hotel probably an hour and a half before the show, before Raw started. And Jeremy texted me and he's like, hey, all the horsemen are backstage. They're going to do something big for Flair. And we're like, what? And so we just drove down to the arena
Yeah,
and walked right up to the box office and bought a ticket,
yeah,
which was, a great seat opposite the hard cam. And, you couldn't do that. I mean, obviously you would have to go on, something like StubHub or even Ticketmaster and buy a resale ticket that's going to have a jacked up price. And everyone would have known that the horsemen were there. So it probably would have been jacked up even more. But yeah, we got a great face value ticket and that show is probably the best moment of the 10 Mania trips that we've done, in my
yeah.
opinion.
Again, this is before social media, and you wouldn't have known.
Uh,
I didn't remember Jeremy texting you. I thought it was you were on your laptop, just kind of reading stuff, and you saw something about the Horseman. But yeah, I don't. I just remember, and I think the ticket was only like $50 or something.
yeah, I mean, if that, yeah.
It was not expensive at all, and like you said, it was great seats. And I don't think, in this day and age, we would have never been able to do a walk up, like, I don't think, on the Monday
Yeah.
after or the Raw
No,
after Mania.
yeah. And
Insane.
that's probably like the most screen time that we got.
And I think that's also, I feel like 22 was probably, because I do remember, because we were there and then we drove back the next day, and we watched Raw at home, and that was the debut of Umaga and a couple of other things. But I think that's the era where the Monday after Mania became kind of a big deal too. I think, at least in my memory.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think because I think it was what after 19 when Goldberg showed up.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he left at 20, so he was there for a year. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
that would have
yeah,
been.
and I was just thinking I couldn't tell you anything else that happened on that Raw in Orlando other than the Flair ceremony. I don't remember. I'm sure probably a title changed or somebody debuted, but
I
I
remember Big Show and Kali got in each other's faces, but besides that, I don't have any recollection or memory either of
yeah, I'm blocking that one from memory for numerous reasons. Um, but yeah, and I think we've talked about it before recently about the Raw after Mania, and to me, I guess I wasn't conscious of how important that show was until the one in New York that we went to, and that's the one
yeah,
where I really felt like that was one where fans became the show
yeah.
for good or bad. You know,
Yeah. Well, and so, WrestleMania 25, it's the 25-year anniversary. We decided to go again. This time it's in Houston, but we don't do the package deal because now I feel like, okay, we're going to start doing this a little more
mm,
regularly. Let's make it a more affordable event.
yeah,
I know we went to Ring of Honor because I remember Kamala wrestling at that show. Hall of Fame, obviously we included into that, but
mm.
um, we didn't stick around. I don't think we stuck around that year for Raw.
No, yeah, because I actually think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe New York, excuse me, is the only one that we've gone to the Raw after Mania.
No, we went in Dallas because that was the year
Oh,
that
that's right. That's right.
Not Nunzio, Enzo and Big Cash showed up.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
it's one
enjoyed
where
it.
Cesaro went out into the crowd and grabbed the beach ball and ripped it apart because he was, yeah.
Yeah, we went to a few, a handful of the Raws after Mania, but
Okay.
um, usually I was trying to get back to
The work.
work,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But yeah, 25 again. I think we talked about it last week or the week before last. For it being the 25-year anniversary, it just kind of fell flat. I thought, in terms of the card and the hype for it, and the
Yeah.
main event was kind of you know Triple H and Randy Orton. Nothing against
Mhm.
either one of them, but it just was not. To me, it didn't feel like WrestleMania, especially the 25-year anniversary of the show.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Nothing.
oh yeah, for 26, it was fun. It was again a lot of times it's the getting there and then the experiences, not just the WrestleMania itself, but this is the year that it's in Phoenix. I flew to LA a few days ahead of time and saw the sights and went to the Walk of Fame and Madame Tussauds and all that and had a good time. And then we drove to Phoenix, and that was the year we went to. That was the Colt Cabana comedy, or was it Colts
That's right.
comedy show?
Yeah, I think he was the headliner or the one promoting it. Yeah, I mean, comedy is a subjective term in
Right.
this instance, but yeah, and I think the best part of that show, and this may sound, I don't know if it's insensitive now, but the Briscoe brothers were there and fans were buying them drinks before the show. And then after the show, one of them, and I don't remember if it was Jay or Mark, was passed out in the audience.
Yeah.
And, people are just walking, like snapping photos of him as leaving. But yeah, and I remember Austin Aries did like a 5-10 minute comedy set, and then Mick Foley talked about ODB. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I have I do remember the fans buying the Briscoe the beer, and I have faint memory of Foley being there as well. But yeah, not it wasn't like an overwhelming.
Oh, and I remember Cole Cabana did something because he did the it's something that I reference to myself a lot because I don't no one else is going to get it, and two, a lot of times it would come off probably that's semi-racist, where he did the talked about fakes, where you don't where he was talking about being on tour with Ric Flair, and he never got a picture with Flair. When they were in Europe, whatever. But he's like, but I met this one guy who looked like Ric Flair, and I have a picture of him, and he pulled up like this giant photo of him and the fake Ric Flair. So it's like whenever you see somebody that kind of looks like someone, you call them the fake whatever,
Uh-huh.
and then you get a picture with that person, and I'm like, yeah, if I try doing that with, like, oh, the fake Ice Cube, then it's just going to be like, oh yeah, they all, that's not cool. So,
Yeah, yeah. WrestleMania 27 is in Atlanta, and Travis, our buddy Travis, joined us for this one. We were the Heenan family. Oh, and we should mention cosplay at 26. I thought was one of my favorites as
yeah.
incorporated. Had a good time doing that. You mentioned the picture with Chris Hero that we took, I think, on last week's episode, and avoiding Tyler Black, which we kick ourselves now for, but
yeah.
That was fun too, the Money Inc. And I think that was the first year we did Access, and we got tickets. The first night we were there with the tickets we bought, we got pulled into a focus group. This was a free network.
Yeah, this was the focus group for the network. Yeah,
and
I mean,
back, which was cool.
Yeah, my favorite story for that was we're in this focus group of probably about 15 people or so.
Yeah.
You and I think there's like one person that's older than you and I.
Yeah.
And
we weren't that old back then.
I know, which is, saying something about how young the rest of the group was. And, everyone's going around there like, oh, what would you want to see on the network? Blah, blah. And everyone's talking about like, oh, watching the wrestling that I grew up with, being able to go back and relive those old feuds, whatever. And they get to this girl who from the South. So I'm going to do a horrible Southern impersonation. Just get ready. Spoiler alert. And they're like, oh, do you, are you the same way? Do you want to watch these older wrestlers? She's like, nah, I don't like watching people I don't know. And her boyfriend's like, oh, that's true. I can't even get her to watch old movies from the 90s. And I'm just like,
and this is 2010.
Yeah. For the record. Yeah. So old movies from the 90s. I'm like, damn kids, get out of my ring. Yeah.
We offered them some Werther's originals and drank our Metamucil and moved on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got tickets to go back on Mania Sunday, which was cool. So we got to experience Access twice because we got pulled into that focus group kind of early on in our visit there. So
yeah, and then we got to go, and they gave us front of the line passes to see the Hart Dynasty, to meet the Hart Dynasty.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
So 27's in Atlanta. Our buddy Travis joins us. I think this one stands out to me because this is the Mania that we did not rent a car. We did not Uber anywhere because everything was like right there within walking distance. We walked to the Coca-Cola plant and did that tour. We walked to CNN and did that tour. We walked to where Access was. We walked to where Mania was, Hall of Fame. So I thought that was kind of a cool setup, the way they had everything just kind of right there for us.
Yeah, that's always a plus when you're, doing these travel packages. Anytime that you can have everything centrally located. And I think that's one of the things going back early in this conversation about the indie shows is, when we were in New York, the majority of the shows that we went to were in one location. I said this year seems to be the same thing. Like the majority of them are in one location. So you're not running all over town or trying to get from one place to the next. Because I believe that was the problem last year here in LA is that the shows were kind of all spread out.
Yeah. Well, and, like I said, we were the Heenan family that year. That was a lot of fun, bringing Travis into the fold and for him getting to experience his first WrestleMania as well. And, 28 was kind of the opposite in Miami. And I if I had to pick one that was my least favorite, this may have been it because it was all spread out. And we went to WrestleCon and this was like, I think this was the early days of WrestleCon even because it wasn't anything like seems like it is today. We kind of walked around spot to spot and met, a handful of legends and former, WrestleMania superstars, if you will. So we were Vince and Jesse. That was fun. I think that people enjoyed that. Your costume, you were spot on with the Jesse stuff for sure.
And I was surprised at how many people got it.
Yeah.
Because I remember walking, even not even like, it's one thing when you and I are together and
Mhm.
people put it together, but like I remember I after we got to our seats, I walked out and I don't know, went to the bathroom or got something to drink, whatever, and came back. And as I was walking in, like people were yelling, like Jesse, Jesse. I'm like, stop talking to me. I don't like talking to people. So, but yeah, that was cool. And yeah, being on the football stadium of the Miami Dolphins, I didn't have to watch them lose, and I got to experience the stadium. So that was good. But yeah, that one went, and I think because I had gone, like I had mentioned, I'd gone to New York earlier with Jackie and Gary, and then we met up with several of their friends in Miami, and we went down to Key West for a few days. And then, so when we came back, we had like one rent a car that we were kind of sharing. And so that's why I think when we went to WrestleCon, we ended up taking a taxi, and it
Oh,
was
right. Yeah.
it was so far away, like getting around Miami, because the hotel was close to where the Hall of Fame was. That was within walking distance.
Yeah.
But much like Arizona, the football stadium is not in the city itself or anywhere near. It's in actually in a different town. They just call it Miami by proximity, and so driving all the way out there was a pain. But
Yeah. And I remember too, we ate dinner one
oh,
night and we saw Skip Sheffield.
yes, before he debuted as Ryback, yeah, and so yeah, that was like at this little mall section, and I remember we'd gone by a store that was selling like boat captain's hats,
Hmm.
and I wanted to go when he came in. We were at Chili's, plug,
Okay.
not a
I
sponsor.
knew it was a chain. I couldn't remember which
Yeah.
one.
And so when he came in and ate, I was like, oh, I'm going to run down and buy a hat and then go try to get him to sign it. Like, because his name was Skip. I called myself the Skippers. That should be his fans' name, like Hulkamaniacs, call him the Skippers. Um, Glad I did not do that since he then debuted as Ryback and has since become Cryback. So glad I don't have an autographed
Yeah.
thing for him.
That could have gone south quick for you.
Yeah.
Um,
Makes me regret that
29.
Ryback tattoo.
Yeah. WrestleMania 29 is in New
In New York.
Jersey, but by proximity, New York. Um, that was fun going, and I had been to New York when I was in high school, so this was the
Mhm.
first time going back there, and then actually went back the year after that too with my wife for a wedding. But um, being in Times Square and then we did Madame Tussauds in New York, doing the touristy things, but then also took in a lot of wrestling. Chikara and was it Shimmer?
Shimmer.
Yeah, Shimmer, and then Ring of Honor was at Hammerstein Ballroom, I think. Was
Yeah. 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 When we did that show too. Yeah.
Hall of Fame was at MSG. Even though I didn't get to see an actual wrestling show at MSG, just being at MSG again, it's that vibe and that feeling, and you
Yeah.
kind of know you're in such a historic place. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot
See,
of stuff spread out there too, like we were talking about. So it was
yeah.
not quick or convenient to get anywhere, but
Anywhere.
it was
Yeah.
fun with the vibe.
Especially since we were staying in Jersey. Yeah. It was not. And that was another one where, we had to take a taxi to the stadium for Mania because it was a relatively new stadium. There was no real thing. And it cost like $20 for a group taxi to get to the stadium, and then leaving the stadium, they were charging $20 per person for a
Yeah.
taxi because they have you. What else are you going to do? And we're like, and we just kept turning everything down until finally someone said, "Okay, fine, I'll, do it for 20." But yeah, that was one where we got to see future president inducted into the Hall of Fame,
Hmm.
and there's something else about that year that I was going to bring up, but I can't recall what it was. But
Well, we did go to Raw.
oh, yeah, I was going to say that was the one where they had access in the
Oh yeah,
Paul Songas Arena, which is the old hockey arena, which was an interesting setup because it wasn't as spacious. And I remember for one of the autograph signings, I think it was for the not 3-man band. They called the 3-man band. It was Heath Slater and Jinder
yeah,
Mahal.
yeah. There were
3-man
three
band.
men band.
Okay. Like they're like, oh, come in here, but you couldn't see how long the line was. They just had them set up, and then you would go in and sit in a seat, and they just had rows of seats filled, and then it just moved down. And so like we get in there, and we're like, oh, we're gonna be here for like a half hour waiting for this line, which we didn't know existed. So, and that one, yeah, we cosplayed as you were Freddie Blassie. I was the Grand Wizard, manager, not Southern style.
Yeah.
And I think that one was hindered a little bit by our friend Chris not ended up backing out and not being able to go. And he was supposed to be Captain Lou Albano, which I think would have made the other ones more recognizable. I think we went a little too old school for
Yeah. We couldn't talk Adam or Greg,
Greg.
into cosplaying with us, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was fun. I think that was more fun because of the tourist
Yeah.
stuff that we did, the stuff in New York.
Yeah, and that's one where we got to tour the WWE
Yeah,
facilities,
that's
the
right.
production facilities. So
That was cool. That was very cool. Yeah, I had almost forgotten about that, but yeah, that was cool. You know, I remember having a terrible migraine that night of Raw, and I got up a few times because I get migraines. I get sick, and even though I was out there for the cash in for Dolph Ziggler, which was my favorite moment from that Raw, but yeah, it was. I still remember the not feeling good at all.
yeah.
30, we do a road trip again to New Orleans.
New Orleans, yeah.
Um, Jackie, our friend Jackie from Australia, joined us for the road trip. We stopped
Yeah,
in
she was
Tupelo.
working in Banff, Canada, Banff, Alberta. She was finishing up her like 6 months working there, and I remember I drove up from Illinois to Banff, got to stop at a Mean Gene Burger along the way in North Dakota,
Mhm.
and then spent the night in Banff. Woke up to about 6 inches of snow the next day, which was awesome. And then, yeah, we drove back down. Ended up, I think we stayed in South Dakota the first night. Second night, we crashed at Jeremy's place in St. Louis. And then third day, we picked you up and headed on down to Tupelo, Mississippi.
That's right. We stayed at a casino where they had a Jerry the King Lawler exhibit display. That was fun. And then this was probably the most unique arrangements for staying because it was more. I don't know. How would you describe the hotel? It wasn't a traditional, it wasn't
Yeah, it wasn't a chain. It wasn't a Holiday Inn. It was, and I don't, I think I'm trying to remember if we like decided late to go to this Mania like after things had pretty much already gone on sale. And if I don't know if I was booking hotels, if I just look for something cheap or because we weren't near, Jackie and her friend Georgie had done the travel package. So they got put up in the hotel that WWE was using and I was trying to find something close to them. And I don't remember why I chose the hotel that I did, but yeah, it was not, I mean, it was an interesting place. It was a nice place somewhat. I've been in a lot worse, but I just remember when we were checking in, one, finding out which district of New Orleans we were in, which
yeah.
kind of interesting. But then also when the guy's like talking about the room, and I thought he was going to be like, oh yeah, it's twin beds. It's not, which I was like, okay, whatever. But he's like, it's European style bathrooms. I'm like, what's that? He's like, basically there's one bathroom for the entire floor. We had to walk down an outdoor hallway to get to the bathroom, which was where the shower and everything was. There was nothing in the room. And then the breakfast was just out on like a patio or a courtyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a cool, New Orleans is a cool vibe, I think. We were on Bourbon, I was going to say Beale Street. We were on Bourbon Street. And actually, thanks to your connections, ran into a handful of superstars, most notably Mojo and Drew McIntyre. This was before Drew McIntyre was
had a beard.
Yeah. Drew McIntyre he is today, but I still remember talking to him in the street, and that was a cool experience as well. So again, it's a lot of extras that
to go in.
Memorable things.
Yeah, I remember because my friend Jackie, not the one from Australia, other Jackie that I worked with, worked for WWE, and she had texted me. She's like, "Hey, I'm down on Bourbon Street with some of the NXT guys. You want to come hang out?" And I'm like, "Yes." And I remember meeting up at, I think it was the Ascension, Mojo, Drew, and might have been somebody else.
Yeah, I
And
don't remember.
I just remember we walk up and say Jackie, and then Drew comes up and is like, "Hi, I'm Drew McIntyre." I'm like, I know who you are. Like,
Yeah,
but
it was so personable. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, you slapped me on the back after an FCW show in Orlando after WrestleMania 24. So, but yeah, that one was fun. And yes, Mojo Rawley does not get hyped. He stays hyped. That is not a gimmick. That is his reality. And the story that I have told many times from that is walking down Bourbon Street. This guy is obliterated, cannot even stand up, and his friends are trying to help him. And this girl walks by and takes his picture and says, "What's your name? I'll tag you on Facebook." And I'm like, that's the height of social media in our society now. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and that was the year that unfortunately Sting decided to wait until the very end of the Hall of Fame ceremony to give his speech and annoy the person behind us who was upset that he had to wait on Sting.
No, that was in Dallas.
Was that? Oh, you're right.
Yeah, Sting hadn't signed
That's
yet.
right. That's right. Who?
That was the year Warrior went in.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
And we did go to Raw. That we went
That's
to
right.
Raw as well. So, and I can still remember
That's right.
waking up that next day because we were back home, and I had to get up at the, before the crack of dawn to go to work, and I had a text from Burt Prentice, who was a wrestling promoter. That I think that was the year he hooked us up with getting into WrestleCon. But anyway, he had texted me and said that the Warrior had died. That was the text that I woke up to. So yeah, it's hard to believe that's been 10 years already. But yeah, that's kind of I love that Mania just because of the experience, and I do feel like they celebrated the 30-year anniversary much better than 25.
Yeah.
And just being there for that, being there for Daniel Bryan winning finally, and shouting yes with the rest of the crowd. We were Sheik and Volkov. It was a lot of fun.
I remember that when we were sitting on the floor, like right next to the ramp area where guys came out. And I remember after the Battle Royal, R-Truth had gotten eliminated, and he's walking back up the side of the ramp way where guys would, because they didn't have to go back up the ramp, they walk on the floor. And as he's passing by me, I'm like, "What's up? You just got eliminated. That's what's up." And he just stopped and looked at me. And again, I'm dressed like the Iron Sheik. So he's just like, "What the?" And then just kept walking.
Yes, that was a fun cosplay as well, and another tribute back to the early days of WrestleMania. We took a break for 31 and returned at 32 in Dallas. I'm trying to think. I mean, that Mania 2 to me was kind of blah. Zack Ryder,
that was a terrible Mania.
My favorite part of that Mania, but everything else was just kind of there. Nothing's really. I'm trying to think what we did. I know you went to a ball game. My brother lives in Dallas, so I went and visited my brother and nephew for a little bit. I remember eating at Whataburger wearing a Kamala t-shirt. But I don't remember anything.
I don't remember.
We went to Mania, or we went to Raw that next night as well. I do remember that, and I had another migraine. Something about migraines and Mania after Raw. But I can't think of anything else that
Yeah, I can't think of any wrestling related.
We did go. Oh, duh! How could we forget? What did we do that day? That Friday?
Oh, well, you went and
my boy Neville.
You met your boy Neville, Puck.
And then we did. Who remembered?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, and then after that, then we went went to the Von Erich grave sites.
Yes, a little morbid, but yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, if you're in Dallas, you might as well.
Right. So yes, that was a lot of fun. And we went to we did Access and we did all the fun stuff. That was the year though, I think, wasn't the entrance like that was the year it was like 100,000 or whatever the number was, and they only had like one or two. And something funny with the entrances, right? And we stood in line forever.
There was some issue because we got into Mania after the pre-show had already started, and we missed. I think we missed Ryback and Kalisto.
Yeah.
But there was some issue with, I don't know if it was like the ticket scanners or if they didn't have enough openings. But yeah,
something went askew. So anyway, we're gonna wind this up here in just a second with last year. To me, probably my favorite and most memorable. The cosplay was off the chart as Big Boss Man and the Mountie. Kudos to you for putting all that together. And then first year that we're at 2 nights of WrestleMania, we went to WWE World. We went to Wrestling Pro Wrestling, and I missed going to those indie shows because you really are a part of, not a part of the show, but you feel like when you do shout something out or you say something that they can hear you, they react to you, they interact with you,
yeah,
post show, mid show, whatever it is. So that was a cool vibe as well, and being a part of that experience. And then, like I said, Mania itself, 2 nights, getting kicked out on night two for a few minutes, but it was fun. It was a blast, and then just being in LA and that whole vibe is cool to a Midwest boy.
yeah. I just wish night two, after the one jackass security guard kicked us out. I think one, again, going back to you and I being introverts and not really being
Right.
stand up for ourselves type people at times. I think I just got annoyed, and instead of being like, "Hey, let's just walk around the stadium, put your boss man shirt back on, and
Yeah.
even like put on the boss man shirt, put on a hoodie, put your hoodie on, let's get into another entrance." What we should have done instead, we actually took the stuff back to the car, and then that just kind of ruined the mood
Yeah.
for the entire night. And
I agree. I'm a puss, and I should have been more assertive, and especially when people were like, "Dude, he's in character. It's
yeah,
cosplay." So, and the funniest thing to me was that the foam rubber, like
yeah,
the literal foam rubber nightstick I had, was more dangerous than the people carrying the plated belts with metal and jagged edges on them.
yeah.
So,
So yeah, that was unfortunate. But I'll just have to keep that in mind for future cosplay. Do not dress like law officials or anyone, and if
drinking
anyone
an
official like
$18 Stone Cold Steve Austin beer
it.
at WrestleMania though was pretty damn cool as well. And then running into the guy with the Steve Austin mask, Seth freaking Rollins there in
Yeah,
cosplay. So yeah, it was fun. It's always been a fun experience, and like you said, the cosplay adds to that for us as fans. I know some
yeah,
look at it as look at these fucking dorks, and then others are like, oh, let me get a picture with you. So
yeah.
it's
And I
fun.
think, yeah, and that's the problem. I think the problem also with last year is the SoFi Stadium is set up in a way that you can only access certain parts of the stadium. You can't walk all the way around.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You can only go to like the sections that your ticket allows you to get into. And so I think that hinders interactions with
Yeah.
people who can do things. But yeah, so let me ask you this as we're winding down. Last year was our the 10th WrestleMania. We've kind
Hmm.
of said 10 and done, but future WrestleManias, do you think you'll attend again? And will you dress as head cheese the next time we go?
Maybe on the head cheese. I definitely want to go again. The lady down the hall will play a role in that decision. But yeah, I do want to. And again, full disclosure, I started doing the blogs and the YouTube stuff because I did want to monetize and try to help subsidize and not have to sell my Star Wars collection
Yeah.
and things like that. And you know, 12, 13, 14 years later with the podcast and the blog and YouTube, it's still not there where it needs to be. But I am focusing more on YouTube because I have finally reached that 1,000 subscriber mark on the channel. And so, again, if you have stayed around and are an hour 20 into this and still listening and watching, share it, like it, leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm and all that good stuff. So, but yes, I do want to, especially if it's in Vegas or if it's in Minneapolis, going and visiting with the Skull Brothers would be cool. So yeah, I'm not, as they say in the world of wrestling, never say never. So I hope to do another Mania at some point and share those Mania memories with our friends and listeners.
Yeah, I am with you. I think it is uh, it is a fun experience, and I think that's the main focus. Because if I had to look at the WrestleManias objectively for the shows themselves, I can only say probably only like two or three of them were worth the actual money to attend.
Yeah.
But when you factor in everything else around it, that's what makes it the experience.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm with you. If it comes, they still. I'm surprised they have not announced where WrestleMania 41 is going to be located, because normally that comes out like 2 months before
Right.
Mania.
Right.
Which again, I'm glad. I hope they save it for the announcement during the show, like they do.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's in Minneapolis, I don't know. Philly this year has been, apparently the weather hasn't been the greatest up there, and it's going to be another outdoor stadium, where at least Minneapolis will be indoors. But will the weather be a factor in their consideration of having it there? And if it's in Vegas, I'm not a huge fan of Vegas, of just going and hanging out in Vegas. If I go to Vegas for specific reasons to go to shows, but I've yet to I have yet to go to that football stadium, so it'd be nice. And everything would be within walking distance.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice. But yeah, and Vegas, we would fit right in with our cosplay, just walking down the strip. And then I think if it's in Vegas, we have to do tribute to WrestleMania 9. Yeah. I was gonna say Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez, but double doinks I think would be the best, if we could figure out where to get a doink costume.
There you go. That'll be the plan. So, friends, thank you for listening and or watching. Be sure to leave your comments. What are your favorite Mania memories? Have you been to a show? Will you go to a show? Let us know in the comments. And again, share this, like this, review this, and let us know what is on your mind. Chad, thank you so much for being a part of this week's show, and we will talk again soon. Have a great post-WrestleMania week.